All right, let's start with this. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, great to have you. First week of the NFL season's up. Craig will have off the radar on some numbers, etc. at 4:45. Jeff Grimes, in 2021, he could have gotten the job pretty much anywhere. He was happy where he was. And then, of course, 22 and 23 happened. He's at Kansas. And there's some grumbling after the loss over the weekend to Illinois. And there's the note that, I got to do a better job of getting the ball to Neal and Hinshaw in the crunch. In the crunch. And he's right. That's Hinshaw in the crunch. And that's easy, but that's what he said. At least maybe that makes a few people happy.
Yeah, people were not happy about the short passing game with Kansas at all. Jalen Daniels didn't play well. It's one of the worst games I've ever seen him play, for sure. And had turnovers and just wasn't clicking. And then the running game wasn't. He wasn't calling the right plays at that time. He's got two running backs that, look, he would have died to have in his last year at Baylor. Absolutely killed to have in Devin Neal and Daniel Hinshaw. And, when it mattered in a close game, it wasn't like they were behind by two scores. They were behind by a field goal, less than a field goal in the game. They could have run the ball more, and they didn't. Now, granted, Illinois was doing a really good job of stopping them early, but running backs, especially big ones like Neal and Hinshaw, get better and more effective the more they run into the defensive players and the guys get tired of tackling them. They have to do that more, and that's got to be their identity because those are really the most dependable players on their offense.
Yeah, Hinshaw is a really good running back, as is Devin Neal, and they were a big part of what you were expecting from Kansas's offense this year. I just think it's 2 games in, and you're trying to get used to a new offensive coordinator, and Andy Kotelnicki was really good at what he did. Jeff Grimes is a different flavor, and I, thought going into this thing he was going to be a little bit of an adjustment process, just in terms of expectations and what you have been used to seeing. And we saw Jeff Grimes do some really good things. We also saw times where that offense could bog down and get a little bit stubborn. And I know he's got a lot that he wants to prove this year after the way the things at Baylor ended, but it's a little bit early, but I understand where some of the frustrations coming on. So when your strengths coming out were partially your running backs, your running backs need to be more of the load, especially when Jalen Daniels is not playing like some superstar quarterback. He's been fine, he's been okay, but he is not like a guy who's getting the Heisman murmurs early in the season. He's far from that, so you can't expect him to just come in and be a miracle worker. You got to get those other guys involved. And I think it'll just take some time, but Kansas will be okay eventually. But that was certainly a game on Saturday where it was a little bit of a reality check with all the preseason talk and the expectations. I thought that game going to Illinois was going to be, a little tricky, and sure enough, it was. So I think this is a typical reaction to losing your first game, is to start to look for the mistakes and what's going on. And certainly that offense should be a lot better given what you have.
Well, again, KU with the history, what they did to turn it around with Lance Leipold. They have UNLV coming up this week at home and then on the road to open up their Big 12 conference play against West Virginia in Morgantown. So they have the next couple of weeks. UNLV is a team that can kind of give some people some problems with Barry Odom and what they have done so far this year.
Well, they've already beat a Big 12 team.
Absolutely.
They beat Houston.
Yeah,
so
they did.
That's something they could easily go and do again if Kansas isn't careful and doesn't have themselves ready for what is a very good Rebels team and one of the probably better G5 teams, I guess you'd say right now, just based on what we've seen at this point. Tulane's obviously going to throw their hat in the ring, and Texas State could have a huge win this Thursday. But, yeah, UNLV is also one of those teams making a little bit of noise so far this season.
Deion Sanders, okay, we brought this up. Craig, you brought this up. We kind of went back to it. We discussed the game and the loss in Lincoln and some of that the disappointment there. They got mauled on the offense and defensive lines. And then, as we said, Craig brought this up. There was a report yesterday from someone that has a lot of social media clout about the fact that Deion would not let Colorado play their immediate fight song and go see all that when Shedeur scored a touchdown. There is a quick blip of a song that Shedeur likes, and they do that for every player. But Deion, yesterday I saw him respond to one of the reports by saying, bruh, which is like, what are you doing? Here's another one. I agree with him on this completely. That would the band not play the fight song after Shedeur scores? That's idiotic. We got to start having some kind of accountability for this. I agree. I mean, he has to take accountability, and he's getting hammered now. Of course, they've lost, 9 of 10 or 8 or 9 or whatever. Sometimes they bring it on themselves, but just making things up when a school like that already has a lot of stories and things circling the program. Craig, you mentioned it. Deion today mentioned accountability. We don't see that very much.
I mean, here's the deal. If you don't believe him to begin with, you're not going to believe this statement. Like, immediately I saw somebody who I know was running with the story yesterday say, well, if that was true, then why not just say no directly? So, like, it doesn't matter what he says. People already have their narratives. And look, he's provided plenty of ammunition. I'm not saying he's without any blame when it comes to the portrayal in the media, but I do feel like he does get treated a little bit differently than a lot of other head coaches do. So there's a little bit of both going on here. But as far as that story goes, I don't know, other than it was basically debunked right away that story was not exactly what it appeared to be. But that didn't stop basically dozens of media members from picking it up and running with it and talking about it on their shows and their podcasts. So it was treated like it was real. Surprise, surprise. This quote, when I saw it, had like 8 retweets versus, I don't know, like the 800 the other one got.
Yep.
So that's social media for you in a nutshell. And he's not going to be trusted. Like, they're not, it's not a situation where it's like, okay, yeah, that was a mistake. We don't live in that world where we just go, you know what? I don't like Deion or agree with him, but yeah, that was probably a mistake. We don't need to do that. He's right. He would. No, it's they're just going to, oh, he's lying. Like, that's all. Like, oh, well, he's just lying. He's not telling the truth. So it's pointless to even discuss it, really, because people have already made up their minds about everything in regards to that team and to him and to Shedeur and to everybody else. And like I said, I'm not some staunch defender, but I did think it was kind of BS for everybody to just run willy-nilly with a story that wasn't totally confirmed and turned out to not really be totally truthful. But the damage was done, and so it doesn't really matter what the actual truth is. And look, for all I know, maybe I'm the dummy, and he really did order that. But based on what we've seen, I don't think that's the case. And based on what we've seen, there's plenty of other things that are real and legitimate, that are truthful, that you can pick apart from this Colorado football team. You don't need some made-up stuff.
What about the accountability of him not answering questions in the press conference?
I mean,
that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying he's without blame in any degree of anything.
I'm on record. No matter, I don't care what. I like the guy. I like him. I think that there are some things that they bring on themselves. He himself too. But I do like him. But one of the things, take accountability, Deion. Answer the press conference questions that you're asked. So, Paul.
Yeah, Look, I'm with Craig. Like, and this is true for any walk of life. Like, focus on the legitimate things and not the silly things you can't confirm, or when they are confirmed, then, the person who tweeted that was like, yeah, but I was almost right. Like, well, no, I mean, you weren't. Like,
that's media now, though. Yeah, man. It doesn't even matter if you're right. Yeah. Like, honestly, I mean, half the time.
Yeah. So focus on what's real and what the actual issues are, and not the window dressing. And what's real and the actual issues are that Deion has to address is he fundamentally doing the right things to build a football team that can win in the Power Four? Right now, it doesn't look like that. So what does he have to change so it does that? Because they don't look much different than they did from last year. Clearly, he has some recruiting chops because he's Deion Sanders, but is he recruiting the right guys for what he wants to do? Or is he relying on the fact that he's Deion Sanders and he can just decide at any given moment, hey, I want that guy, and maybe get him, as opposed to the coaches like Kirby Smart who have their staffs doing the work all the way down the level of everything that they can do. So those are the real issues. Whether he plays, 10 seconds of Shedeur's or the kicker's fight song or a rap song before they play the fight song is like such a minor thing.
I can't. The last time I heard about a fight song story is when Texas was playing there. There was the big controversy of the slave background to like that was the last time I remember hearing a controversy about a fight song. Was Texas fight, right? And that,
yeah.
And so that, like, it's not something we talk about all that often. Like, we hear it all the time, but we don't talk about it. So this is, to me, just it's just one of those things of the attraction of Deion and the reporting on him is different than it is for a lot of other guys. He's not perfect. I just think that there's a floor on there's a bedroom on the 3rd floor that's already on fire. You don't need to go pour gas. Like, they've already lit it themselves, and they may or may not try to put it out, because if you're to believe some opinions, and I'll ask you guys this in a second, like, this is already rolling towards the end anyways at the end of this year. So you don't really need to go and like come running up with another canister of gas. It's already lit. Like, it's already spreading, and it's just a matter of like, can they win enough games to like, make it reasonable enough to survive this thing? But you lose to Colorado State, and like, my gosh, like the whole 3rd floor is going to be on fire. You lose to Baylor. Like, I mean, this thing could burn down in a hurry because it's so combustible as it already is. But I know that's not how it works. And so there's a scrutiny. He asked for that scrutiny, and it's up to him to, as a football coach at a major university, win football games. Bottom line, fight song, schmite song, this or that. Like, he's just got to find a way to win at this point. That's the only way you're going to shut up a lot of this stuff. And I had a question, but go ahead.
No, go ask your question.
Do y'all think this is his last year? I mean, are you already on that boat?
I'm one of those that usually I kind of fall for that, but I'm not sold on that.
I'm not sold on it. I think Deion has to make a decision, though, if he's going to continue going forward. And it's a decision that his former boss, Jerry Jones, has not made. Do you want to win your way, or do you want to win the way that works? Because if you want to win your way, maybe there's a path to that, but clearly it can take years until you kind of happen into it. Or you can find, I'm going to win my style, but I'm not just going to be drilled into what I think I should be doing. Like, I've got to adapt. I've got to bend. I've got to change some things that I'm doing. And look, if you're Deion Sanders and you can't just go into any town USA and recruit a high school player.
You're not trying to.
You're not trying to, but you feel it's because you start you can't just do it because of the fame aspect of it. All right, fine. Then get somebody on your staff who is really good at it. And then you get on, like, when you get to their house, you're like, all right, put me up on the TV and let's talk to this kid and be like, hey, look, it's different and all that. Do you look philosophically and go, hey, this high school offense I'm running doesn't work in the Pac-12, the Big 12, or any 12. We need to adapt that.
Yeah. Someone said, did even the media bring this up? Are they the ones that reported it? It doesn't matter. You have to do your due diligence and also check on things. Just because Barstool or whoever pops something up, and I'm not blaming them, but I did see them with it, doesn't mean it's true. I've been burned about 3 times in the Twitterverse by the Ian Rappaport fake account. 3 times. And you've kind of like, hey, be careful with that one. And so I've deleted it. But I think that if you see something and you go, oh, and it's just because it's on social media doesn't mean it's true no matter who has reported it.
Well, the type of situation you're talking about is parody. Like, that's intentionally just joking and making light of it and being a fake Ian Rappaport or fake whoever. And that's parody. That's pretty well known what that is. This is like actual reporting and saying that this happened. So look, the days of like traditional reporting are pretty much null and void because of social media. And so typically you would have like vetted this and asked sources or whatever. And I don't know what this person behind this story did, but it turns out like we pretty quickly like saw holes poked in it.
Yep.
So you would have done your due diligence and, made sure it was all correct. Nowadays, I don't think that many people do that outside of like maybe the major corporation. And I don't even think they do it all the time anymore. Like, I watch some of these news channels and I'm like, this is just as much tabloid stuff as whatever. So yeah, there was a way it was done once upon a time, but I think that's few and far between, especially on social media. So nobody's worried about being wrong, because the whole point of a lot of that stuff is just, I don't care if it's true. I just want people to retweet it and give me impressions and follow me. Like, that's all people are worried about. They're not worried about whether it's true or not. They're worried about whether it gets the attention that they want.
You mean like a lot of realignment Twitter handles?
I mean, it can be like that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pick a topic. Outside of college football, there's plenty of people that do that with celebrity stuff, or they do it with, any number of things. And I mean, anime fans or, whatever. Boy, like the K-pop fans are like, the Taylor Swift fans are some of the nastiest people out there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not exclusive to college football, but it's a lot of, you got to you got to really know what's what and what's not. And a lot of it's not what you think it is.
No question. All right. Now, coming up Saturday, Ricky Thompson joins us at 4, Baylor sideline analyst. Baylor will be hosting Air Force. Air Force, the academies always have amazing helmets and uniforms, but Baylor will go to the Black Ops look, and they're asking fans to do a blackout, so to speak. And a lot of times the connection, the communication between the fan base and the athletic administration can be a little bit interesting. But I love this look. I love this look. There will be a flyover. There will be a 100-yard or whatever American flag. Air Force is in town. There will be some military presence. I think this is great. We'll have Troy Calhoun at 5 or a little bit after 5. But I do love this look for Baylor.
I do too. I do want to make one single mention that I was thinking about. You're talking. I think it is very interesting, though, that the Colorado media is starting to turn a corner. Like with that story, like Sean Keeler was like the outlier, but now it feels like after these first couple of weeks, like everybody else is sort of like suddenly getting real fed up real quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've seen that.
That's an interesting,
I've seen that. Yeah,
that's an interesting change in the wind that I think is just worth noting. But as far as this goes, they're not calling it a blackout, but it's a blackout.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is not called a blackout. This is our Black Ops game or, whatever theme. But these are anthracite jerseys, even though they're all black, basically. And this is not a blackout game, but we want the fans to wear all black. So it's just the verbiage is not exactly the same as it was, but it's what they're wanting. And I think the uniforms look really sharp. They're cool alternates. We've never seen them before, obviously, because they just got them this year. And they have not worn all black in ages. And fans have been clamoring for that. And fans have been clamoring for a blackout. And fans have been clamoring for the promotions department to do more and more. And it's like, okay, well, they've got the salute to service military theme. They've got the black uniforms. It's a night game. There's a flyover. They've got like the Miracle on the Brazos guys that are going to be there. So you want promotions, you got them this weekend. And I hope to see that place jam-packed and full and fired up because they're doing the first blackout in forever. And this is what people have been clamoring for. But as you said, like, who the hell knows with this crowd? Because I know in Ames, Iowa, it'd be jam-packed elbow to elbow. I know in Lubbock, Texas, it would be too. In Waco, I don't know. I don't know. I would think it would be, but I can't say that for sure.
Paxton, and we'll move on. Paxton, Baylor fans care about the strangest things. And at times, you're right. They get into certain parts and get into weeds on stuff that sometimes I just don't understand. It's their team. It's their school, whoever. They can feel the way they want. It's also going to be, again, on Saturday afternoon, and it could be about 100 degrees. But
6.
That's not, you know what? You said Lubbock, Manhattan, Ames, they will be blacked out. They would shut it off. They would be blacked out throughout from goal line to goal line.
Yeah, that's the thing that been a problem with Baylor fans. I will say, Paxton, how quickly we forget. Things are going great for Texas now, so they've forgotten about all the little ancillary things that they were complaining about at DKR for years and years and years. And now that they're good, it's like, winning helps. I'd like to see that, but whatever. I'm happy.
Well, they did change the corner, turn the corner a couple of years ago. They used to be. It used to be like sometimes you're walking into a mausoleum. The crowd.
That's Del Conte, man. He's
done a great job.
All that and everything else with that university's athletic department, and they are operating on full cylinders. But yeah, there was a time not that long ago when there was very apathetic crowds. I mean, they still turned out larger than most because their fan base is so gigantic, but it wasn't like it was like when they showed up at Michigan and they had like what seemed like 50,000 people there.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't like
loud
that
and proud,
all the time.
No.
They're riding a high right now for sure. But yeah, to your point, like there is a lot of stuff. Like if it wasn't black uniforms, then there would be something else that was wrong that needs to fix and blah, blah, blah. But regardless.
I love that they call it Black Ops.
Yeah, I mean, it's the salute to service game. So it's a way of saying blackout without saying blackout and having the tribute to the military and having the flyover and all that. So yeah, that's smart. And they're playing Air Force. Like there's the whole tie-in is the fact that they're playing Air Force. But while all that's cool, like I don't know what the reaction is going to be with this crowd. And I just think that's unfortunate because you shouldn't really be questioning that. But because you've been so wonky for a year and a half, and because this is not the biggest fan base, it is more of a question mark than it is for others.
The 1974 Southwest Conference Championship team will be honored. That might help a little bit, you hope. And, of course, we'll have Ricky Thompson on to discuss that here momentarily. Craig sent this to me yesterday evening. Arizona will debut their red Cats script helmet In a non-conference game, like Baylor-Utah was non-con, the game against Kansas State, which is a hellacious game, Arizona, K-State in Manhattan, a non-conference game, does now count. It counts as a win or a loss, but not a part of the Big 12 standings.
I normally hold this for off the radar, and I didn't realize that I'd taken that out of my bag once I sent that. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just find something else, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I always pay attention to the uniforms, and this is a battle of cats. So an interesting choice for Arizona playing Kansas State to go with the script cats. Nice idea there. And, I think script stuff looks pretty cool for the most part. So they look a little Houston-y if you didn't look at the shoulders, like as far as the red, white, red. But I like the script on the sides, and we'll see, man. They are a team that is a tale of two games. They were really good offensively and very explosive and prolific in their first game, and Tetero McMillan had a huge showing, and then last week he did nothing because they were obviously ready for him and making anybody else beat them, and Arizona couldn't really do that all that well. So their offense was not great in the second week, and the defense really led them. So I don't know what to expect with Kansas State, but I do think that'll be a fun battle of the cats. That maybe that becomes like a more routine thing between those two on the football field and on the basketball court as well. But yeah, that looks like a nice little change for that game.
Wouldn't it be something if at the end of the year those two are fighting for the conference title and this game won't matter? It might. It might.
Would it? I don't know.
Not the tiebreaker would be like maybe.
I think it'd be stupid not to if you played each other, but yeah, it's a non-conference game. Remember now the tiebreaker is like head-to-head, common opponents in the Big 12, and then there's like a third one. One of them is who could win a gunfight, and then this one here. So I think we need to check the language, because if head-to-head says head-to-head or head-to-head in conference play, that's a big difference.
I have it here in my folder. I'll let you guys know what it actually
Regardless,
says.
It's two of the teams that you thought coming in were going to be in the running for the title. I think that's still the case. I think K-State's looked a little bit better than Arizona, but K-State has their own issues to iron out, and it's not like major things that can't be overcome. They're just not like super sharp right out of the gates.
Right.
But they're 2-0. They got a big win in New Orleans, and I think they'll be favored in this game. So, yeah, that ought to be fun, and that's one of those first Pac versus Big 12 matchups in this new era that I'm looking forward to.
All right, a couple of more notes. We will have Ari Temkin of Big 12 Radio Network at 3:40. SMU. This has been a surprise. Preston Stone coming back from a very nice year. Jennings, of course, played down the stretch and played a lot. And they're going to Kevin Jennings, as Rhett Lashley, after the loss to BYU, will replace Preston Stone. Jennings played in that title game for SMU for the American Conference. He now will get the start coming up this week.
Yeah, it's been one of the big surprises to me this year that Preston Stone just hasn't been very good. And the other night, only got 4 passes in, and BYU was pinning their ears back and rushing him. We'll see how Kevin Jennings does here. But I think it's interesting to note that, Kevin Jennings didn't win this job at a camp, if there was a true competition or not, and he is there now. I mean, maybe it makes them better. I hope for SMU's sake, it makes them better, say, for 2 weeks from now. But I think that this is interesting, and Preston Stone not being good, and he's played well in the past, but not being able to avoid the rush is kind of a new little wart on his game.
Yeah, this is not at all what I expected. I thought Kevin Jennings would continue to play a little bit, but I don't know. I didn't have Preston Stone getting benched 3 games in on my bingo card. Like that's not great for him. And I don't know what's going on there. Like you got the yips or something. I mean, you played a lot of football. You shouldn't suddenly not be effective. And I don't know what to make of that. I know you make some of it of that Kevin Jennings is a pretty good player who they have high hopes for, but that doesn't explain Stone not performing well. So that's a pretty drastic measure for Rhett Lashley to take. And, I think that's just what you got to do at this point. So, yeah, awfully disappointing, especially if you're somebody who had like Preston Stone in your fantasy league or something, thinking this offense was going to put up big numbers, and because he has put up big numbers in the past. But, he's just not getting it done, and you got to steer the ship the right way. So that's what Rhett Lashley's doing, and trust him to do that.
Well, so he's made that change. Here's another note about, I think we're going to adopt him, Ashton Jeanty. 9 rushing touchdowns through 2 games, most in Mountain West history, and the most in FBS football since Ricky Williams had 9 on his way to the Heisman Trophy in 1998 at Texas.
Yeah, one other thing I remembered, I was watching Rhett Lashley the other day. He said that, like, initially they were trying to just, like, let Preston Stone be the guy, like, in that game. And then he just wouldn't but, like, the 2 drives he had to start the game were just so bad. They're like, well, we got to do something. We have to do it. So that's what happened the other night was they actually, like, this is you, like, you take it. And he didn't perform. So, again, that was another comment I remember now in hindsight. But, yeah, sorry. What did you just mention there? My bad.
About Ricky Williams.
Okay.
Ashton Jeanty has 9 touchdowns on the ground. Ricky Williams had 9 in 98 on his way to the Heisman Trophy. Of course, was the record-breaking running back there.
Yeah, I mean, I should have made T-shirts as the number 1 president of the fan club before all of the hype started. But unfortunately, I think everywhere I turn now, people are talking about Ashton Jeanty, which is great because he deserves it. Wish they could have pulled out that upset against Oregon the other night. That would have been incredible, and he certainly did his part in that game to help them do that. They couldn't pull it off, but yeah, he's on a nice tear through 2 weeks. I don't know if he can keep it up. I mean, I believe that he can. I just don't know if, like, what defenses start to do and if his teammates can make sure that it's not all on his shoulders and his shoulders alone. If they can, then yeah, he's got as much of a pathway to the Heisman as anybody, not named Quinn Ewers, basically right now. So I'm hoping he finds his way to New York. I would love to see that for that young man, and he would certainly be deserving based on what we've seen so far, but there's a long way to go. It's still cool to see a player who's not at, the same 10 schools getting a lot of this attention early on, though.
Quinn Ewers got some attention for that win against Michigan in Ann Arbor. Massive crowd in the big house. His stats overall were not like wow, but 24 of 36. He was very efficient, cool, calm, and collected. 246 yards and 3 touchdowns against Michigan. He has been named this week's Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award National Player of the Week.
Yeah, he qualifies because he plays at Texas for one, so already plays in the state, but also is from Southlake. So he's a double, I guess, entry as far as being eligible for the award. And he didn't have the gaudiest numbers, like you said, but he had them in the big house against a top 10 team and a huge non-conference game in front of, a bunch of millions of people. We'll get to that later. So, yeah, I think he's deserving. That was really impressive. He looked really sharp, and he is somebody who you hear now constantly after this past weekend, but you kind of heard some of it before. He's got a knack for the big games. I don't think that's something you can deny at this point. And, nearly last year got awfully close to them winning that Washington game at the end, if you all remember.
They're throwing the end zone to –
he was part of the reason why.
Yeah.
He's a great player. He's really coming to his own, and you're seeing why there was so much attention on him as a recruit and why there was such high upside. I think we're seeing that more and more, and he's really becoming the leader that at this point in his career you'd want him to be.
I don't know for sure if last year they won at Alabama. They have one in Lincoln. They have one in now Ann Arbor. They won at the Horseshoe in 2005. They went on to win the national title, beating Ohio State in a classic game when Lima Swede caught a touchdown pass with a couple of minutes left from Vince Young. They've pretty much almost checked all the bingo card boxes on the cathedrals of college football where they have won. There's probably a few where they haven't played, maybe a handful of what you would consider. They've won at A&M at Kyle Field when they have their huge crowds. And, of course, they play again with even a bigger stadium. They have, the Rose Bowl when they won the championship in 2000 was January 2006. But they have done a good job of checking off that particular list. DJ Lagway. Paul, is he good enough to bring them out of the funk? They, of course, won a game. They won big. He had 400-plus yards passing. Set a freshman record, school record, and good for him. Good for Florida. Get a little goose. Now, whether or not they come back to reality, which most likely they do.
Well, if Billy Napier is really sincere about keeping his job, he needs to either completely give the starting job to DJ Lagway or transition Graham Mertz out in such a fashion that Graham Mertz doesn't realize that he's not the quarterback until he's not. Because I can say this with absolute certainty, and I know it was Samford, in one of the few games that Florida's gonna have that easy of a time this year. Graham Mertz would not have thrown for 400 yards against Samford. Absolutely would not have. DJ Lagway did. And now I know he's a true freshman, and I know all of this, but man, I don't know how many more times we've got to see Graham Mertz go out there and just be average for you to go, you know what? I need to roll the dice because they're going to have to get some sort of athletic edge as they get deeper into the SEC schedule. They're about to play a really athletic and strong defense in A&M. Then they've got to go play Mississippi State, and they've got Tennessee, and they've got all these other teams. I think the edge has got to be DJ Lagway. But if you don't want to do that, I'm not stopping you, Billy.
The game against A&M is at home in Gainesville. I don't know what the swamp will be like, but maybe someone like Lagway gets that fan base kind of cooking. I don't know.
Do you want to talk about when it rains, it pours? So apparently last week, there's a huge issue with a whole gigantic parking lot that's used for tailgating that a wrong email got sent out to the parking enforcement people. And so they kept telling people who'd paid for those parking spaces that they couldn't park there that day. And so all these people didn't get to tailgate, and they were just.
What'd you read about this?
Oh, Matt Baker and several others. There was a huge.
Is this from you being the editor of Seminoles Incorporated?
No. But we were just talking about with Baylor and everything.
Yep.
So you're losing, and then you have this little snafu on a miscommunication.
You can't do it.
Nobody tailgates, and now people are even madder. And they're like, Billy's going to put Graham Mertz back in there.
Yep.
And I can't park.
Yep.
And this, it all builds.
It does absolutely build up. Fran Brown, we got to meet him for a little bit. He was at Baylor under Matt Rule. He's now the head coach at Syracuse. They're off to a nice start. Here's an interesting quote. When you play us, just be quiet. Reminding folks it's a new era at Syracuse, perhaps some early or leading up to a game chirping. I like Fran Brown. I've reached out to Syracuse. I don't think we'll get him this week for sure, but I'm not saying no, we won't. And so there's Fran Brown with a nice start at Syracuse with the Orangemen.
Yeah, because he picked up something Brent Key said and then made it sound like Brent Key murdered the entire Syracuse family. So he's definitely learned from Kirby Smart of blowing something totally out of proportion to motivate his team. And he also learned that from Matt Rule to probably some degree as well, the motivation. So yeah, that's what that's about. That's Brent Key said something, Fran Brown took it and just made it total bulletin board material. And, that's something he definitely learned from Kirby Smart, because you talk about somebody who can make it sound like the greatest team of all time somehow is being made to lose, picked to lose by everybody in the country. That's what Kirby Smart does. And it's ridiculous, but that's part of the fun of it all. And so, yeah, Fran Brown learned from him and Matt Rule. So he knows how to motivate, even if it's over something that's not really what it appears to be. I
saw Shihan had this tweet. We've known him. He's, of course, from here. And it was pretty cool. I didn't know this. UL Monroe, first-year head coach Brian Vincent, ex-UAB interim, who was passed over for the head coaching job by Trent Dilfer. And this past weekend, this was when the game was still going on, beat Dilfer straight up with a nice win for UL Monroe against Dilfer at UAB.
Yeah, the Fighting Brandos there at ULM. That's his alma mater. That was a great win for them. UAB is going to be very interesting, going forward with Trent Dilfer. He has very much a different look on coaching than a lot of people do. I think that we talked to Jacob Zeno about him, says he loves him and loves his intensity and his fire, but man, they took it on the chin from the Warhawks last week. Yes. What are they now? Are they still Warhawks?
They're the UL Monroe Warhawks. Yes, absolutely. They're 2-0 UL Monroe. UAB drops to 1-1. So there's a story. Zeno had 167 yards, 1 pick. They just didn't have much on offense in that game. Not even 260 yards, I think, total offense in that game. Now, first time ever, I don't have the tweet, Cole Kubelik, who does a great job covering college football and also with the SEC. We've had him on a lot, and he's good. This is the first time ever. We showed the AP Top 25 poll. First time ever that 6 of the first 7 ranked teams, which, Craig, you brought up, they were SEC, That has never happened in college football in the history of the AP poll, and that does not surprise me. That's just almost impossible to do, but they have that right now.
Well, you went and you grabbed two teams that are perennially in the top 10. So you took those from somebody else, and those are now yours. And one of them's not working at their max potential right now, and that's Oklahoma. Or maybe they are, and that's the scary part. Texas is, obviously arguably the best team in the country besides Georgia. You could debate on maybe Tennessee or whoever else you want to throw into that conversation. But, I mean, yeah, I think stuff like that's going to be more commonplace because you've gobbled up the teams that are in the rankings for the most part. So, it's a really cool feat, but it's also you just went and added Oklahoma and Texas. So there's an extra one, if not two, top 10 teams pretty much every year, all year long. So that's a byproduct of realignment right there. The Big Ten will have something to say, I'm sure, and at some point about a record number of teams as well. But, I mean, it's really impressive, and it's, more of just what we're going to see, I think, moving forward in terms of bogarting a lot of the spots of certain things like the playoff or the top 10 rankings or whatever, because look, they've got the majority of the best teams now that they've gone and grabbed them. And guess what? If they go and poach at, Clemson and Florida State in the future, then they'll have 10 of the top 12 for the first time because you got 15 blue bloods in your conference. So that's all a byproduct of realignment, but it's a cool feat. And I don't think we'll stop there in week 2 with the poll records. I think there'll be more of that as the season goes along.
All right, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, it's just like Amazon saying hey, isn't it amazing? All these boxes we get delivered. Well, yeah, I mean, you bought everybody's business. Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is the plan.
Those buildings, the one we have here in Waco and anywhere else, are just monstrous, but nothing compared to the size of the Tesla building down on what is the toll road on the east side of Austin, which is just insane how big that is.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody's just ever seen that building, it's the biggest building I've ever seen in person as far as from width wise. It's crazy looking how huge that facility is when you drive by to go to the airport, which is what we were doing. It's massive.
Not done yet either. And
it's crazy.
Yeah, so we haven't even seen the full breadth of it.
I saw it when we went down to go fly out of Austin for Vegas to go to Big 12 Media Days, and it went on.
It's bigger than a stadium. But it's not super tall, so it's so big and wide.
How long is it? A mile and a half?
I don't know.
I think it's going to be a mile.